What is it about the mountains that call to us? What is it about the wilderness in general that speaks to so many people? I feel like it's an interesting question to consider because I think for the majority of human history, the wilderness was considered to be a chaotic and dangerous place. It was something that needed to be conquered or kept at bay in order to survive. Whether it was the elements or making enough food through the winter or through the year just to survive, or the deadly animals, it was about survival. But compared to today, getting outside and staying outside for extended amounts of time is really a treasured pastime for millions and millions of people. To kind of illustrate this point, I had what I thought was kind of a funny thought about this contrast between our love of nature today and versus people just trying to survive even just a couple hundred years ago. So just picture all of the people this year that are going to be camping, backpacking, through hiking, or just traveling across the US to see a national park. Whereas, again, even just a couple hundred years ago, no one was taking cross-country trips just to see a specific landmark. And as far as I'm aware, no one was doing a 2,000 plus mile through hike just for the sake of doing it. And yet, today, more and more people are getting away from the comforts of their homes and intentionally entering into the wilderness. According to an article posted by the Smithsonian Magazine that I found on Google, in 2024, the National Park Service saw a record-breaking 331.9 million visits across 400 sites managed by the National Park Service, which I have to imagine involves a high number of people going to see multiple national parks in the same year, because when I first saw that number, I was like, that can't be right. A group literally the size of the entire US population going to see national parks, and then it dawned on me that a lot of people probably saw multiple in the same year, but I digress. All that to say, the question of why does the wilderness call to us and speak to so many of us continues to be an intriguing question for me. Because I don't think there's an apparent black and white answer. But as somebody who loves to think and ponder and philosophize about things, and as somebody who also loves the great outdoors, I'm going to try to come up with some sort of answer in this video. So I'm going to give some reasons as to why I think the wilderness and nature speaks to us. But before I even get into those reasons, I wanted to read a couple quotes from a few famous outdoorsmen to see if they have any insight on this question. So the first one comes from John Muir, who's a very famous outdoorsman, who said, "In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks." I thought that was well put. Edward Abbey said, "Wilderness is not a luxury, but a necessity of the human spirit." Agreed. John Burroughs said, "I go to nature to be soothed and healed, and to have my senses put in order." Can I get an amen? And last but not least, Theodore Roosevelt said, "There is a delight in the hardy life of the open. There are no words that can tell the hidden spirit of the wilderness, that can reveal its mystery, its melancholy, and its charm." So according to Teddy there are no words, and this video is futile. But I'm still going to try anyway. So here are my 4 reasons as to why I think the wilderness / the great outdoors resonates with so many people. Reason number 1, it offers a reprieve and a much slower pace of life compared to our busy, hectic schedules. This reason might seem kind of contrived or obvious, but I still feel like it's a legitimate reason as to why so many people choose to spend their vacations camping or hiking or just seeing some beautiful scenery. For many people in the modern era, and especially in the US, we're all on that 40 to 50 hour a week work grind. And for a lot of us, our jobs are not super easy peasy or laid back kind of jobs. And I don't know, maybe your job is really rewarding and you love it, but work is still work. And I think ever since technology entered the picture, it's obviously helped make us more productive with less amount of energy required to do the work, but it's undoubtedly increased the pace in which we think and the pace in which we carry out our work. I would say even our leisure activities that we engage in through our phones and TVs feel hectic and fast-paced and not really rejuvenating. By the way, if you want to learn more about the hectic pace of our modern era and how to slow down, I highly recommend reading John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Fantastic book. But by comparison, the activities one does outdoors are much slower, particularly camping and hiking. And I know there are plenty of outdoor activities that are fast-paced and really dangerous. Looking at you, mountain bikers. But when it comes to slower paced outdoor activities, I'm thinking specifically of camping and hiking. Those activities of camping and hiking are just way more slower paced, because when you're hiking, the only thing you do is put one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, and so on and so forth. I don't know about you guys, but for me, after I've been hiking for a while, I get into some sort of like flow state where it feels almost like a form of meditation. It stops feeling like a grind, and I just kind of get locked into a rhythm where it feels like my feet are doing the work for me, and I'm just along for the ride. Maybe that's just a me thing, or maybe not. Let me know if you can relate. But as I was saying, I feel like camping is very similar as well to hiking when it comes to setting up your tent, setting up your sleeping pad and sleeping bag, making a fire, and then cooking your meal over the fire. It all takes time, forces you to slow down. So all that to say, I feel like one of the main appeals to spending time outdoors, whether we realize it or not, is that unhurried, slower pace of life. It gives us the opportunity to simplify our lifestyle for a few days and just take a deep breath of fresh air mentally, emotionally, and physically. So there's reason number one. Reason number two as to why I believe so many people enjoy the outdoors is that you have to put in some sort of effort to get the reward. You know, the older and older I get, the more I feel like I've come to realize that any form of restful or rejuvenating activity requires some sort of down payment of time and energy on our end. Let me put it this way. To me, every form of rest that actually helps us feel better is akin to working out. It's always hard to get going at the beginning, but you never regret having done it afterwards. So like some more examples, like reading a book, journaling, working on a creative hobby or project, all of that requires some sort of time and effort on our part, but it almost always feels rewarding to have done it. And I think the same is very true for hiking and camping. Also, I know this video is trying to answer the question of why the outdoors resonates with so many people, but I guess as I continue to write this script, I'm starting to realize that for me, spending time outdoors equals to camping and hiking. But anyways, I think a big reason why hiking and camping outdoors, why it's so rejuvenating for a lot of people, myself included, is because we get that reward after putting in the effort. At the end of that long day hike, when you get to the pinnacle of the mountain, or when you get to see that epic view that you saw in all of the AllTrails pictures from the app, it feels awesome. It feels awesome to see that epic vista or to reach the pinnacle of that mountaintop. And similarly to camping, after finding that exact right spot for your tent and spending all that time setting up, getting the fire going, and then eating a warm meal cooked over the fire after a long day, it feels amazing. That meal feels like the most delicious meal you've ever eaten. Yeah, I can speak from experience from that. And likewise, eating your packed deli sandwich lunch halfway through a long day hike also makes it feel like the best sandwich you've ever eaten. So, in summary, there's reason too why I think people love spending time outdoors. It requires time, effort, and energy on our end. And as a result, we get rewarded with some awesome view or some big payoff. Reason number 3, I think so many people love going into the outdoors, is that it is a totally unique space that we enter into compared to the spaces we normally inhabit in our day-to-day lives. I had this realization a year or two ago when I was writing a blog post for a counseling practice I was previously working at. Life update: I still have my counseling license in Ohio, but I am not counseling anymore. But anyways, this idea came to mind that part of what makes nature so mesmerizing and alluring for so many of us is because we are completely stepping out of our man-made spaces into a place that is entirely God-made. All of the buildings, structures we live in of drywall, brick, and furniture are completely replaced with the raw, unfiltered scenery of trees, leaves, dirt, bushes, just the earth in general. It's honestly crazy to think about this the more and more I do, because I think we get used to living in our little squarish, rectangular rooms until we step outside into the wide open wilderness that we realize that, wow, there's a lot more going on in this world than I thought. I think this is, to me, in part why standing on top of a mountain or along the edge of a sweeping vista is so breathtaking, is because we're not used to being able to see off into the horizon for miles and miles and miles. And along with this point, I think there's just something spiritual about being completely engulfed in God's handiwork. It's just such a vastly different experience being out in the woods or along a mountainside compared to being in an office building or a house or an apartment. All of the horizontal and vertical lines of our rooms and buildings contrasted with the never-ending variety of a ridgeline and a mountain range, or the infinitely nuanced face of a massive canyon wall, all the way down to the incredible complexity of an insect crossing the hiking trail. It's all just so original. It's all so nuanced and unique wherever you look. And to me, that all points to God and his unfathomable creativity and beauty. Which leads to my 4th and final reason as to why the wilderness resonates with so many people. Reason number 4, being out in nature or the great outdoors is a spiritual experience. You might not be a spiritual or religious person, and the point of this video is not to win any atheists or agnostics over to my side. But still, I think I will forever and always feel confused at those who find nature and incredibly beautiful scenery beautiful, but they aren't convinced there's a creator that's responsible for that beautiful scenery. I don't know, to me, it seems like it takes much more faith to just assume all of these incredible landmarks and vistas just came into being by accident, rather than believing that something or someone created it for our pleasure and enjoyment. Or at least that feels a lot more compelling to me. But maybe we'll save this discussion for another video later. But regardless of where you fall on the spectrum of religious versus non-religious, it is still undoubtedly a spiritual experience, being out in nature. It humbles you. It makes you realize how small you are. It inspires awe and wonder that such places even exist in the first place. And for so many of us, the journey of going to these places and exploring these sacred places is akin to a pilgrimage. To many people who don't enjoy being outdoors, it's confusing to them. Why would you go spend a weekend or a week or however long outside where you have to sleep on the ground and where you get all sweaty just to walk on a trail and see a few sights? It's a good question. And I think the answer is in part that we get to experience God in a very personal and new way. Because to go back to that question of why would you spend so much time outside just sweating and out in the elements, it's a hard question to answer. Like, why do we find a mountain or a lake or a canyon to be so beautiful? Have you ever tried to answer that question? Really? I mean, I can try to come up with answers like the gravity and the size of the canyon of Zion is just so unique and humbling. Or I could say the colors of Bryce Canyon are just so vibrant and beautiful, contrasted with the green pine trees. And all that's true, but at the end of the day, it's just beautiful. And from a secular point of view, there is no real answer to that question of why we find it so beautiful. There's no biological benefit to survival to finding a canyon or a mountain beautiful. There's really, as far as I'm aware, no compelling answer from the secular world as to why we find nature so moving. But in the context of a Christian worldview, we have a framework to understand that God has given us the capacity to create and to enjoy things simply for the sake of their aesthetic beauty. And nowhere is that more apparent than when you're in the great outdoors, experiencing God's handiwork firsthand. I think, at least for me, that's why I enjoy being outdoors and seeing grand sights so much. It's because I feel like when I'm standing on the edge of Zion Canyon or next to an alpine lake, I'm seeing a very real reflection of the Creator God. As a painting reflects the character and personality of the artist, so does creation reflect the character and personality of the Creator. So that is my answers. Those are my reasons for why I think nature is so beautiful and why it resonates with so many people. I'm curious to hear, do you agree? Do you disagree? Are there any other reasons that come to mind for you as to why you find nature so beautiful? Let me know. And I'll be looking to make more videos like this that philosophize and just go into more depth as to why nature is so awesome. So hope this was enjoyable for you. Get out there, go see some sights yourself, and enjoy the great outdoors.